Welcome to the Bare Metal Cyber Podcast. Each episode brings you timely insights, expert analysis, and actionable intelligence to keep you ahead in the ever-changing world of cybersecurity. Subscribe to the newsletter at baremetalcyber.com to stay connected. And don't forget to visit cyberauthor.me, your one-stop destination for a wide collection of best-selling cybersecurity books. Equip yourself with knowledge from industry experts and stay ahead of the threats. Let's get started with today's topic. Will AI trigger the first white-collar recession? Layoffs rarely start with pink slips. They start with silence. Friday reservations evaporate, luxury returns stack up, and invoices slip from net 30 to net 60. Inside the company, offboarding tickets multiply. Software seats quietly shrink, and travel freezes. As high-income roles slide toward artificial intelligence, AI, demand softens and security muscle thins. The people who remember brittle integrations and near misses walk out first. Attackers do not need a recession, they need gaps. And AI, fast and fluent as it is, cannot recall the weird things your environment learned the hard way. This piece tackles the two questions every practitioner is asking. Will my job survive? And what risks arrive when we replace people with AI? We map the tipping points that turn cautious budgeting into a demand spiral, show which security tasks get automated versus merely augmented, and flag the fresh attack surface agents, connectors, and machine identities created along the way. Most importantly, we outline how to keep judgment in the loop and where to build career moats so you are harder to replace than the tasks you do. The silent white-collar recession. Artificial intelligence causes a white-collar recession by cutting the demand for high-skill labor without cutting output. Task-level substitution, drafting briefs, summarizing research, building decks, triaging tickets lets one professional do the work of two, so hiring freezes replace layoffs and layers quietly disappear. Finance models assume the same revenue with fewer seats, and managers backfill with tools instead of people. Survivors carry larger spans, juniors lose the entry rungs where they used to learn, and contractors lapse first. The result is fewer openings, lower job switching, and wage pressure in professions that normally set the pace for urban economies. Once high earners pull back, the damage spreads through demand rather than production. Discretionary spending drops first: premium dining, elective healthcare, travel, tutoring, boutique retail, then corporate purchases follow as advertising, consulting, and software seats are trimmed. Wealth effects amplify the pullback as equity grants sag and upper-tier housing softens, removing cash-out refinancing and dampening renovations. With less revenue at the top of the local pyramid, small businesses reduce hours, municipal tax receipts slip, and credit tightens. Even workers who remain employed raise precautionary savings, deepening the slowdown and turning restrained hiring into genuine unemployment among white-collar cohorts. Firms that master automation first widen margins and market share without growing staff, forcing slower adopters to chase price cuts they can't afford. Procurement consolidates vendors, support moves offshore or to manage services, and training budgets evaporate because co-pilots cover the gap. Banks, seeing weaker cash flow and rising delinquencies in affluent zip codes, tighten underwriting and shorten working capital lines, accelerating failures that would have survived a recovery. At scale, you get a self-reinforcing loop. Efficiency gains accrue to a few, hiring stalls across the rest, and professional services, marketing, legal, and finance become the shock absorbers. This becomes a white-collar recession because the shock concentrates in occupations that anchor urban demand and tax bases while setting norms for pay. Watch six-figure postings, offboarding volume, billable utilization at agencies, ad budgets, and software seat cuts. If two or more trend down together, the slide is real. Countermeasures exist. Share productivity gains through shorter weeks or profit sharing. Retrain for complementary oversight roles, and keep security, reliability, and customer trust budgets intact. Artificial intelligence can lift output, but without experience in the loop, it erodes resilience. turning a cost win into a demand problem you can't automate away. Long-run cost of gutting expertise. Why short-term savings backfire. Incident quality drops first, and it drops in ways dashboards don't show. Veteran analysts carry pattern memory that never made it into a runbook. The brittle integration that flakes under load, the vendor update that always breaks logging, the signature that screams when a certain partner connects. Replace them with automation and junior oversight, and you get fluent output that misses the odd-shaped threat. Escalations arrive later, containment windows widen, and minor misclassifications become expensive cleanup. Artificial intelligence is fast at synthesis. It is weak at the scar tissue intuition that keeps small fires small. Then the organization turns fragile. With fewer experienced people, leaders lean harder on vendors and model outputs they cannot challenge. You still ship changes, you still close tickets, but the second pair of skeptical eyes is gone. A connector gets one scope too many. An agent inherits a production secret. A fallback path silently fails. When reality diverges from the demo, nobody inside owns the judgment to halt, roll back, and argue with the glossy slide. What was once a resilient system becomes a glass house efficient on good days, catastrophic on bad ones. The training pipeline collapses next. Entry-level worklog triage, enrichment, initial containment was how juniors learned the craft and earned trust. Hand that to co-pilots and agents, and you erase the rungs of the ladder. New hires become dashboard attendants who never build mental models of failure. A year later, you have mid-level titles without mid-level judgment, and succession planning becomes a rumor. When incidents spike, you discover you cannot surge. There is no bench to promote. No one who has practiced the ugly, improvisational parts of response. Finally, culture erodes. Fear-based automation teaches people to keep their heads down and let the machine decide. Postmortems turn shallow because curiosity feels like blame, and ethical pushback on risky shortcuts goes quiet. The stories that knit a team war rooms, near misses, oddball lessons stop accumulating. You still have tools and playbooks, but you lose the habit of learning that makes both better. Short-term savings look great on a slide. Long-term, you've traded resilience for speed, and the bill arrives the night something weird happens. The displacement math for security pros. Budget contractions rarely announce themselves with a layoff. They arrive as headcount freezes and quietly expiring contracts. Security feels it first at the edge. Internships paused, contingent staff not renewed, and entry-level requisitions quote, pending automation outcomes. Co-pilots boost throughput per analyst, so finance assumes fewer seats can do the same work. Queues stay open, but the coverage model thins. Fewer eyes per alert, fewer humans per change window, fewer people to pair on tricky cases. The risk isn't instant replacement, it's a slow narrowing of the ladder, starting where the job was supposed to begin. One senior analyst plus the right automations can now span multiple queues, shifts, and products. That looks efficient on slides, but spans of control and on-call rotations tell the truth. When one person covers 3 functions, fatigue grows and novelty gets deferred. Ticket per analyst and AI-assisted resolution rates will climb, while time spent on hypothesis building, hunting, and post-incident improvement quietly shrinks. Leadership will read that as productivity. Practitioners will feel it as a quality squeeze. If your team's night and weekend coverage consolidates without relief, you are trading resilience for optics and inviting noisier, longer incidents. Watch for early tells that displacement is coming for roles rather than tasks. Hiring plans pause until the pilot concludes. Training budgets and conference travel freeze. A generative tool granted a narrow sandbox suddenly gets organization-wide scopes to documents, tickets, repos, and calendars. Procurement pitches consolidation savings that pull sensors or shorten log retention. Runbooks are being rewritten for standardization, not to teach, but to feed the machine consistent inputs. Contractors are offboarded first, then junior backfills slip. When exception reviews and access requests start going to a new automation council, assume the shape of your job will change. Time horizon matters. Task displacement is immediate. Co-pilots take the repetitive 30% today. Role reshaping takes quarters as teams redraw swim lanes and redefine seniority. Full role elimination is uncommon in incident-heavy environments because novelty and liability resist autopilot. Your move is to make judgment visible and indispensable. Document the decisions you make under uncertainty, instrument your cues and thresholds, and take ownership of cross-cutting work like abuse prevention, change control, and kill switch design. Track requisitions, offboarding volume, and scope creep in machine identities. Upskill before the dashboard tells you what you've already lost. Smart, not experienced, common failure modes when people are removed. Artificial intelligence sounds certain even when it is wrong, and that confidence slips past tired reviewers. You get fluent summaries that stitch together mismatched facts, normalizes anomalies, or recommends the playbook that almost fits. In logs and alerts, that means plausible explanations for signals that actually deserve a stop the line. The gap is domain memory. What the model hasn't lived, it can't recall. Treat every high-impact recommendation as untrusted until a named human validates the assumptions, cross-checks against ground truth, and records why an alternative wasn't chosen. Confidence isn't evidence. Require both. Context is where experts quietly earn their pay. Veterans remember the brittle integration that breaks under load, the dependency that must restart twice, the partner feed that always spikes false positives after maintenance. Automations trained on typical data miss these local quirks and root around the messy reality your stack runs on. The result is elegant, failure clean, fast, wrong. Institutionalize the tribal knowledge, a living gotchas registry, pre-change checklists that name the weirdness, and reviewers empowered to veto when a proposed fix ignores local conditions. Generic intelligence needs specific guardrails. Under pressure, models degrade exactly when you most need judgment. Novel incidents bring distribution shifts. Attackers craft inputs to drag agents off the safe path. Telemetry disappears mid-breach, playbooks collide, and the system insists on following an average case plan through a worst-case moment. That is when a human incident commander earns the badge sequencing containment, choosing what to turn off, and owning the liability calculus. Bake in tripwires that force escalation, novel indicators, missing data, conflicting goals, or safety budgets breached. When uncertainty spikes, control returns to a named person by design. Optimization loves the wrong target. If you reward ticket closure time, detection blind spots grow. If you reward model latency, it rejects the slow checks that catch fraud and privilege abuse. The automation does exactly what you asked, not what you meant. Fix the incentives. Measure risk reduction, verified resolution, and learning captured, not just throughput. Require a second pair of human eyes on irreversible actions and make rollback a first-class metric. Goodhart's law is undefeated. Once a measure becomes a target, it stops being a measure. Design goals the attacker can't game. New attacks surface created by automation and agents. Prompt and content injection now arrive disguised as business data. A calendar invite with an agenda, a pasted log snippet, or a ticket comment can contain hidden instructions that hijack an agent's chain of thought, leak data, or trigger calls to external systems. Treat every input as hostile until proven otherwise. Sanitize and normalize text. Strip markup, block tool-invoking phrases, restrict what context the model can see, and require explicit human approval for actions with financial, privacy, or privilege impact. Build deny lists for dangerous verbs, allow lists for safe tools, and log the full prompt right-pointing arrow tool, right-pointing arrow output trail for later scrutiny. Connector sprawl is the gift attackers did not have to earn. Agents wired into calendars, drives, source code, customer records, and issue trackers Inherit every permission you grant, then chain them. Keep scopes narrow and tokens short-lived. Rotate machine identities like you rotate human keys. Inventory every connector, record its purpose, owner, and data domains, and expose a one-click kill switch. Monitor egress by connector, not just by user, and alert on unusual reads and writes across projects. The cardinal rule: no connector should possess more reach than a single, well-defined job requires. Your model supply chain is now part of your attack surface. Third-party weights, fine-tunes, plugins, and evaluation sets can carry backdoors or poisoned examples that behave normally until a trigger phrase appears. Demand signed artifacts, hashes, and provenance for training data. Quarantine new models in a staging environment with synthetic and red team tests. And promote only after they pass canary prompts and metamorphic checks. Keep a model bill of materials alongside your software bill of materials. Document default system prompts and version every change. If you cannot reproduce a model's behavior, you cannot safely rely on it. Finally, expect output trust abuse. Attackers will craft artifacts that look official because a system wrote them. Policy summaries, runbook steps, vendor memos, even approval emails. Watermarks are weak. Provenance is stronger. Stamp every high-impact artifact with verifiable metadata. Who generated it? With what model? Under which controls? And who approved it? And display that provenance in the user interface. Require dual control for irreversible actions, and train teams to treat machine output as a draft, not a decision. The goal isn't to slow work, it's to make sure authority comes from people with a record, not from a convincing paragraph. Control failures that appear when humans are pulled out. Separation of duties collapses when an agent can both request and approve a risky change. The loop looks efficient: detect, propose, execute. But it erases the two keys safeguard that stops fraud, privilege creep, and bad pushes. Fix it like payments. The entity that recommends must differ from the entity that authorizes, and neither may deploy alone. Bind agents to narrow roles, require dual control for irreversible actions, and route final approval to a named human on an auditable channel. If a workflow cannot prove two independent authorities, it is not automated. It is a single point of failure. The second pair of eyes often vanishes under the banner of speed. Review steps marked rubber stamp get deleted, leaving high-impact changes to sail through on the authority of a convincing paragraph. Reintroduce friction where it matters. A checklist that names the data, assumptions, and rollback plan. A short synchronous review for privilege, money, or data movement. A cooling-off timer for actions that cannot be undone. Make "why not" part of the approval. If no human can articulate the negative case, the system hasn't earned permission to act. Drift arrives quietly. A prompt tweak, library update, or new training batch shifts behavior just enough that guardrails no longer bite. Yesterday's safe pattern becomes today's silent misclassification. Treat agents like production services. Change control for prompts and weights, canary releases with shadow mode, metamorphic tests that assert invariance, and automatic rollback on violation of a safety budget. Post every change with diffs and expected effects, then verify in telemetry that reality matches the claim. If you cannot explain why an automation changed its mind, you must assume it changed it for the worse. Logging gaps turn incidents into guesswork. Many teams record outputs, but not the prompts, context, model versions, tool calls, or approvals that produced them, leaving no chain of custody for decisions. Build tamper-evident, immutable logs for every artificial intelligence action. Input, system prompt, retrieved data sources, tools invoked, identities used, outputs, and who approved. Keep retention long enough to survive litigation and delayed discovery. Expose searchable traces to responders, not just auditors, and rehearse retrieval in drills. If you cannot reconstruct what the machine did and why, you cannot safely let it do it again. Governance and liability when artificial intelligence makes operational choices. Start by deciding who is on the hook. If an agent changes a firewall rule, pays a vendor, or closes a fraud case, a named human must own that outcome. Not the tool, not the vendor. Map every automated action to an existing policy, approval authority, and risk acceptance process. Clarify escalation paths. Who can halt? Who can override? Who carries incident command when automation misfires? Work with legal early to align on regulatory exposure, breach notification thresholds, and indemnities. Governance that exists only in a slide deck becomes liability the first time the agent is confidently wrong. Next, make decisions auditable end-to-end. Record prompts, system instructions, retrieved context, model and plugin versions, identities used, tool calls, outputs, and explicit approvals. Keep logs tamper-evident and retained for discovery, post-incident review, and regulator inquiries. Tag artifacts with provenance that is visible to users. Who generated this, with what, under which controls? Sync retention with your record schedule and privacy obligations. Redact only with documented process and access control. In practice, if your responders cannot reconstruct what the machine did and why in under an hour, your governance is not real. Then, set guardrails that bind. Define never automate zones, privilege grants, production deletes, payment execution, customer communication during incidents without dual control by independent roles. Build allow lists for safe actions and explicit deny lists for dangerous verbs. Cap blast radius with rate limits, quotas, and per tenant sandboxes. Require human confirmation for irreversible changes and any action crossing data boundaries. Limit agent scopes to one job and one data domain. Rotate tokens frequently and give every connector a kill switch. Separation of duties should survive automation. Otherwise, you automated your weakest control. Finally, treat reliability as a contract. Before deployment, red team the agent with adversarial prompts, poisoned inputs, and missing telemetry. Promote only after it clears canary scenarios and metamorphic checks that assert invariance. In production, monitor precision, recall, false negative cost, and drift against safety budgets. Roll back automatically when thresholds break. Version prompts, weights, and tool chains with change control and staged rollouts. Keep a model bill of materials and evaluation history alongside your software inventory. Governance is not paperwork. It is the mechanism that lets you move fast and know when to stop. What gets automated versus what gets augmented? Inside cyber roles. Tier 1 operations automate cleanly. Alert triage, deduplication, enrichment, and first draft tickets. Let copilots summarize telemetry, attach context, propose playbooks, and schedule follow-ups. Keep escalation judgment, containment sequencing, and exception handling with a named human. Define crisp thresholds that force a person back into the loop. Novel indicators, missing telemetry, conflicting tool outputs, or any action that changes privileges or money. Measure the cost of false negatives, not just speed. The win is faster, boring work, not fewer brains. If an agent can close a ticket without uncertainty logged, your process is built for failure. Governance, risk, and compliance benefit from automation, not abdication. Use models to draft policies, map controls to frameworks, assemble evidence packets, and pre-write audit narratives. Keep control design, risk acceptance, compensating control selection, and regulator conversations human. Require provenance for every artifact, what source, which model, under whose authority, and forbid agents from generating evidence they can also consume. Make exceptions explicit and time-boxed, with renewal prompts that reach a person, not a queue. In practice, the model preps the binder. An accountable owner decides what's true and what the organization will stand behind. Red and purple teaming borrow speed, not judgment. Let copilots enumerate surfaces, mutate payloads, build lab harnesses, and script repeatable checks. Keep target selection, rules of engagement, harm minimization, and impact assessment with humans who understand context and liability. Require chain of custody for data and explicit operator attribution for any intrusive step. Ban autonomous changes to customer-facing systems outside approved test windows. Your goal is more hypotheses per hour and faster reproduction of interesting paths, not a spray-and-pray machine. When in doubt, the human operator owns the stop button and the ethics. Security engineering leverages scaffolding, not shortcuts. Copilots can generate configuration baselines, infrastructure as code templates, policy as code, and clean diffs for review. Humans must own architecture trade-offs, blast radius design, failure analysis, and rollback plans. Enforce code review by experienced engineers, especially for identity, cryptography, and data movement. Treat agent-authored pull requests like untrusted third-party contributions. Lint, test, fuzz, and stage behind feature flags. If your automation can merge to production without a human signing the risk, you have not augmented engineers. You have removed them from the only parts that matter. Career moats for practitioners: how not to be replaced. Build judgment under novelty. Volunteer for incident commander rotations, chaos games, and post-incident synthesis. Practice deciding with partial telemetry and conflicting goals. Keep a personal log of cues, thresholds, and trade-offs that guided tough calls. Then turn it into runbook footnotes others can use. Learn graceful degradation. What to turn off first, how to contain without collateral damage, when to eat risk to save time. Models imitate historical averages. Your moat is choosing well when there is no average to copy, and documenting that choice so it becomes institutional muscle. Think like an adversary who reads your automation playbook. Map abuse paths that exploit agents, connectors, and machine identities. Prompt injection in tickets. Cross-domain data pulls. Tool chaining that hops from calendar to code to customer records. Become the person who can break your own workflow safely and design layered mitigations that still let business move. Maintain a small lab where you can reproduce attacks and test fixes without waiting for a vendor. Threat modeling, kill chain mapping, and secure by design reviews are skills that rise in value as organizations automate the edges. Master socio-technical communication. The skill models do not hold. Translate risk into business impact without theatrics. Who is affected, how soon, what costs, and which choices change the curve. Write clear decision memos with options, trade-offs, and a recommendation tied to objectives, not fear. Run short, respectful briefings with legal, finance, and product where you ask for authority, not sympathy. When the room is split, be the adult who frames the decision, names the liabilities, and proposes a reversible step. People trust steady operators. Promotions follow trust. Adopt the toolsmith mindset. Treat artificial intelligence as an instrument you tune. Learn prompt design, retrieval patterns, evaluation harnesses, and guardrail libraries. Build small, reliable artifacts your team uses: daily extractors, detectors, lint rules, policy checks, and own their metrics. Keep a personal eval suite of tricky edge cases that agents must clear before you rely on them. Share your kits and teach others to extend them. When you become the person who makes everyone else more effective with automation, you stop competing with the tool and start being the reason it works. What good looks like? An automation plan that keeps humans in charge. Start by codifying when a human must take the wheel. Classify actions as read-only, reversible, or irreversible and bind each class to explicit review rules. Force escalation when uncertainty is high. Novel indicators, missing telemetry, conflicting tools, cross-tenant data pulls, or any request that touches money or privileges. Give agents safety budgets for rate, scope, and spend. When they exhaust a budget, they pause and page a named reviewer, not a queue. Record the decision, rationale, and rollback plan in the same place. If an action cannot explain itself, a person shouldn't approve it. Then strip agent power to what one job actually needs. Bind every connector to a single data domain and a single purpose. Issue short-lived tokens. Rotate secrets from a vault. and isolate network paths so agents cannot chain tools without you noticing. Monitor egress by machine identity, not just by user, and alert on atypical reads, cross-project copies, and bulk exports. Maintain an inventory that lists owner, scope, and last review for each agent, and keep a one-click kill switch handy. Break glass access should route to a human, expire fast, and leave an auditable trail. Make reliability measurable and enforce it like uptime. Build an evaluation harness before launch, including adversarial prompts, poisoned inputs, and missing data scenarios. Promote only after canary and shadow runs. Meet precision, recall, and false negative cost targets. In production, compute drift signals from model outputs and decision deltas, then roll back automatically when safety budgets break. Version prompts, weights, and toolchains behind change control with diffs and expected effects, and verify outcomes in telemetry, not slides. Track mean time to detect and resolve for agent-touched incidents separately, so you know if faster quietly became sloppier. Pair automation with a workforce plan that grows judgment. Keep apprenticeships alive by reserving specific entry-level tasks for humans on rotating duty, then graduate them into commander roles through drills and mentored on-calls. Tie a portion of automation savings to training budgets, lab time, and knowledge capture so institutional memory compounds instead of leaking. Write explicit paths from Tier 1 to Expert that include toolsmith skills prompting, evaluation, guardrails so people advance by making automation safer. If the plan only cuts heads, you did not modernize. You mortgaged resilience to meet a quarter. Conclusion: automation will keep accelerating, and some tasks will vanish, but the risk isn't that security disappears, it's that experience does. Demand spirals thin teams. Agents fill the silence with fluent output, and organizations mistake speed for safety. The incidents don't stop. They just get weirder, and without scar tissue, the response gets slower and more brittle. Treat artificial intelligence as a force multiplier, not a foreman. Keep separation of duties intact. Keep logs complete, and keep a named human on the hook for any action that moves money, grants privilege, or changes customer-facing systems. For leaders, the long run belongs to firms that modernize without hollowing out judgment. Narrow agent scopes, enforce dual control, and fund apprenticeships, drills, and knowledge capture alongside every automation rollout. For practitioners, build moats. No model can cross incident command under uncertainty, adversary thinking that breaks your own automation safely, clear risk communication, and the toolsmith skills that make the system reliable for everyone else. If you preserve experience while you automate the rest, you won't just survive the employment shock. You'll be the team others copy when it hits them. Thanks for tuning in to the Bare Metal Cyber Podcast, your trusted source for cybersecurity news and insights. Remember to subscribe at baremetalcyber.com so you never miss an update. And visit cyberauthor.me for best-selling cybersecurity books that equip you with expert knowledge. Until next time, stay secure, stay vigilant.